The Chargers absolutely dominated the Lions in the Hall of Fame game, but it was Keandre Lambert Smith who absolutely stole the show.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, especially the late night editions of it. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, we had real football being played, and there's a lot to get into from this game that the Chargers absolutely beat the Lions down in every facet.
They surely did. 34-7, had 5 turnovers that they forced in this game, and it just seemed like they were ready to go. They looked prepared. They looked crisp. They played clean football from beginning to end, and that's the way I want to start the 2025 season.
Absolutely, man, and I think the great thing about it is just, especially when you get those kind of points put up, especially when the game went the way that it did, there's so many players to shout out. So many players stood out in this game, but maybe none more than a guy named Keandre Lambert Smith, or KLS as we affectionately know him by. He was the guy who stole the show. He was the star of the first preseason game in the Hall of Fame game, surrounded by Hall of Famers. It was him that really stood out, and it's funny to think that, someone could stand out with, a box score that looks pretty modest if you kind of didn't see the way that it happened. But again, it's kind of like what KLS has done in training camp so far, where it's like, it's not just the number of catches, it's how he's making these plays. And that was the most impressive part of the first game for the Chargers, especially knowing they need weapons. They need some of these young guys to step up. So for him to go out there, 2 catches for 43 yards, gets the touchdown, that was so awesome to see.
And because of how it was done as well, because he did it beating man-to-man coverage on both of those catches, basically. In the first one, he shakes the defender and is able to, traverse down the football field, locate the ball over his shoulder, and, receive it, in the breadbasket for like a 28-yard gain. That was a fantastic rep there. And then the touchdown was just a thing of beauty. I mean, he sets up the defender, cuts in hard on a slant route, and catches the ball and basically walks into the end zone, showing that quickness, showing the steady ability to catch the football. He really showed everything that we wanted to see. A guy that, really can take the top off of defense, but also can help you with the man-to-man coverage aspects that the Chargers desperately needed to get better at this year. So very encouraging first performance for KLS.
Yeah, hugely so. I mean, it's a 3rd and 4 where he creates, great separation, opens up a big window for Trey Lance to throw into for that 28-yarder. And then it was poor former Chargers legend DiCaprio Boodle, who I, remember most from last year. I think Jim Harbaugh not knowing his name one time when they were on the sideline, he was trying to talk to him. He was the one that got beat on the KLS touchdown. But yeah, that play, I think especially for a guy KLS's size, not a huge guy, right? How do you handle the physicality of the NFL? How do you handle guys when they're going to get up on you and trying to put their hands on you? And there were a couple times where his routes were absolutely deterred to some extent by the physicality of the defense. And that is something he's going to have to continue to kind of work at. One of the ones I'm talking about also was illegal, and he drew a flag because of the physicality.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is about KLS, especially with the 4.3 speed that he brings to the table, is you can try to get aggressive with him. You can try to jam him off the line of scrimmage. You can try to do these things. But if you don't get him,
but if
careful.
You miss,
exactly,
you're in trouble. Yeah.
He can absolutely make you pay, and he's gone in the blink of an eye. So I think that was really nice to see him kind of have those moments, to see him have that first big game, to hopefully get some confidence under his belt, to be able to keep that going forward in a wide receiver room and just a cabinet of weapons that feels like it needed to be replenished, and we're kind of waiting to see which one of these young guys can step up. But speaking of young guys stepping up, how about Trey Lance, man? A dude who we've kind of laughed about at certain times just because of the last preseason game. We saw him, turning the ball over 6 times, 2 fumbles,
wasn't good.
1 loss, 5 interceptions, Tony Jefferson and his nightmares, right? He was one of the most impressive performers for Thursday night. I mean, it was 13 of 20 to 120 yards, 6 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. Again, especially when, he played a little over a half, right? Well, I actually played like 2.5
Two and a half quarters, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they left him in longer than I thought that they would, but it was just kind of how he did it. I think that the completion percentage is going to be skewed here a little bit because I think 3 of those incompletions were just fade balls in the end zone. It wasn't really, super inaccurate passes or anything like that. But it was just, hey, no turnovers, right? Looked calm and collected. Had a, really great throw over the middle to Tucker Fisk for a big play at one point.
Nice.
Really threaded the needle there. Very, very impressed by Trey Lance's first game as a guy that we thought didn't necessarily have a chance at the QB2 spot when they signed him, but feels like he very much entered that conversation on Thursday night.
He looked like he was in command out there, Daniel. He looked very comfortable. He looked like he was prepared, and it showed in his mechanics. It showed in his performance. He was able to, thread the ball when he needed to put a little bit of heat on. He was able to do that. He threw it with accuracy. He also was able to throw with touch, which is something that he said that he wanted to get better at, is just being able to, layer those throws, being able to feather those in there. And he showcased that tonight. The
Will Dissly touchdown was an example of that.
That was a beautiful throw. I mean, an absolutely beautiful throw. For Trey Lance, who has not played a lot of football, who came into the league with, a lot of pedigree, obviously being drafted very high in the first round, not being able to play a lot of football, not playing a lot of good quality football. This was a very encouraging performance for Trey Lance.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how you could look at it any other way, but I think another impressive group besides the quarterbacks is DJ Uiagalelei even looked pretty good, but only had a couple of passing attempts, right? But the running backs impressed me, and I would start with Kamani Vidal because he's a guy that very much went into this training camp as kind of maybe even a fringe roster guy, but a guy fighting for the RB3 spot behind Omarion Hampton, behind Najee Harris. And I think he did a good job of, maintaining that at the very least on Thursday night. And I think, again, 9 carries, 37 yards, 4.1 average. That doesn't sound that great, right? Has a long of 16, also has 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He had like 3 or 4 goal line carries that went for, 1 or 2 yards, had a 1-yard touchdown at one point, which is going to affect the yards per carry. So I don't want people to get caught up in that part of it. The part that impressed me the most about him specifically, and a night that really all of the running backs looked pretty impressive, was he showed what he can do, right? He has the physical play on the outside with Rock Ya-Sin, where you called it a car crash collision on the outside, where neither guy really, backed down at all. Mm-hmm. There was a total stalemate in that one, and then punches it in a physical run on the next play. And then to kind of show you what else he has in the bag, the next time they get in the red zone, he pops one out to the outside, has 2 defenders to beat, and is able to get the corner and score a touchdown on a 4th down. So Kamani Vidal, stock up for me in this one. I can definitely see the extra gear Greg Roman talked about, but overall just an impressive night by the Chargers running backs.
It was a really, really good night for the running backs in the room. I liked the physicality that Kamani Vidal ran with, especially because he's a smaller running back, and you're going to have to be able to run in between the tackles. But he showed that he can do that, and also showed the speed to be able to win the edge. So I like that. Also want to give a shout out to Hassan Haskins as well. Feel like he performed exceptionally well tonight. He played like a big running back. He looked like a big running back. He was bowling people over. He was breaking tackles. He looked really good tonight. 6 carries, 34 yards, 5.7 yards per attempt. Even Naheem Hines, had a good solid performance with 8 for 34 and 4.3 yards per carry. So pretty much everybody who touched the football tonight, I felt like looked good. Even with Omarion getting only a couple of carries, I thought you saw what you wanted to see on the 8-yard carry. Him being able to break tackles, being able to fall forward, being just difficult to bring to the ground. I think that's what you wanted to see. Obviously, we weren't going to see many carries out of him because he's the RB1 for the team right now. Yeah. But I think you were encouraged by what this running back room looked like tonight.
Absolutely. And I mean, with Omarion Hampton, he did have the one was a defensive offsides on one where he broke a tackle and kind of dragged 2 other dudes for a first down, but then ended up getting wiped off. Then he has the strong 8-yard run where, he breaks the tackle at the line of scrimmage, great burst through the hole, and it takes 2 guys to drag him down before he's almost already getting a first down. The one gripe, got to be better on that 3rd down play, right? I mean, it was a very small sample size. He tries to bounce one out to the outside. It's a 3rd down. You got to lower your shoulder there on that cornerback and pick up those 2 yards instead of trying to get outside and turning that gain into a touchdown. One small gripe, but I thought Omarion Hampton, even in limited action, looked pretty good, but almost no one looked as good as Nikko Reed, whose draft stock or his chances of making the roster, that stock went way up because he picked up right where he left off from these training camp practices. So we're going to talk about him and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. And one of the things I love about Monarch Money is that me and my wife's finances are completely intertwined. And by that, I mean she does everything. So it's been so great for me to have Monarch Money so I can keep track of everything and all the new expenses that have come in my life over the last 16 months since Dylan's been born, but also just always kind of being in sync with each other and knowing what's going on is one of my favorite parts. But you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. David, let's flip it over to the defensive side because one of the guys, I think the last guy we talked about on yesterday's show, or the show that came out this morning, I should say, that we were really excited to see was Nikko Reed, right? The undrafted cornerback from Oregon who had just made a ton of plays leading up to this game. And they didn't slow down once this game started. He did even more to kind of, we talked about yesterday, like it felt like a practice squad spot was already his. Right. It felt like he basically already locked that up even before the first preseason game, just if it had ended, yesterday. Now it feels like he's very much putting his name into the roster conversation after the big game that we saw from him tonight.
And it was a complete performance for Nikko Reed. He was making tackles on special teams. He was making his presence known there. He was, also being physical on run support. He was did a great job of breaking up a pass. And being physical, over the middle of the football field. And obviously the big one, he jumped a route and almost took it back to the house for a pick six. He had almost a 60-yard return on that. And to me, it looked awfully reminiscent of that Tarheeb Still pick six against the Atlanta Falcons where, Kirk Cousins throws it out there. Tarheeb reads it all the way, takes it back to the house. It looked very, very similar to that. So Nikko Reed doing absolutely everything he possibly could in this football game to keep making plays and keep trying to remember or remind everybody what his name is.
Yeah, I mean, he missed a sack. That would have been the cherry on top. He had one play where he missed a sack, was really there and in a great position, but would have been like a 6 or 7 yard loss. That would have been really nice to see. Obviously, he is a guy that, has the ability to tackle, has the right amount of physicality and want to for the position, especially as someone who at least physically kind of would be a slot, just as far as what his dimensions are. Yeah. He carries all those characteristics for sure. And it's just like, man, we've talked about this cornerback room. Like, I don't know who loses their spot. We know how high this, Charger staff has been on Jasir Taylor. I think it was easy to tell which one of those guys was better in this game, at least on the first watch, right? You have to go back. Dean Leonard, both big special teams guys. But like Nikko Reed feels like a guy who gets swooped up. If you try to sneak him onto the practice squad, you probably lose him if it keeps going at this pace. I mean, if it keeps going at this pace, with like this torrid pace that it's on, there's no way he doesn't make the roster, right? But like even just with what he's done so far, like it's hard to imagine someone being able to raise their stock any more than Nikko Reed has so far. Like so impressive. These are the kind of stories you don't know who it's going to be, David, but you know it's going to happen with somebody. And one of these undrafted free agents is just going to ball out. And so far, it's been Nikko Reed. So I loved that showing from him. Yeah. Also, let's just give a shout out to Tony Jefferson picking up right where he left off, David. I think that's what you want to see when you're talking about a guy that, what does it look like to kind of show that you're too good to be out on the field? It looks like what Tony Jefferson has done over his last 2 preseason games.
Yeah, for sure. As far as I'm concerned, I don't need to see any more from Tony Jefferson in the preseason. I think, to me, even in this game, it was abundantly clear that he was a man among boys out there. I mean, on special teams, he was making big tackles. On defense, he was making, punishing hits, and also got yet another interception, and a fantastic interception at that. It just seems like whenever he's on the field, especially in the preseason, his hair is changing colors and it's getting really, really big because he's going Super Saiyan. It's been really fun to watch Tony Jefferson in the preseason, and he had another vintage performance tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and nothing will ever match the one he had against Trey Lance in the final preseason game last year, especially because he was probably like 60% back from his pulled hamstring. But like, that's what it should look like when, you're trying to tell your coaching staff, hey guys, I get it. I'm the old guy. I know you got to put me out here to get some snaps in the preseason because somebody's got to take these snaps, but they shouldn't be going to me because I'm on this roster. You need me on this roster. And like, he just, physically, obviously he's an older dude. Mentally, he just looked like he was just so far ahead of the guys he was playing with. Like, it's just, he's playing chess out there and everyone else is playing checkers. But I was pretty impressed, David, just by the Chargers' interior defensive line, which one of the things we didn't get to bring up yesterday when we recorded was just who's going to play in this game on the defensive line was one of the things that we kind of had stashed away and something we planned on talking about today. And everyone played except for Teair Tart. That was pretty surprising. I was surprised to see Deshaun Hand out there. He was probably the guy I was most surprised about.
Yeah.
Naquan Jones, obviously, is a free agent veteran signing that you had. Little surprised to see him out there. But to me, I was really watching closely, and I'm going to go back and watch these, this game again for sure.
For sure.
But I was watching for Jamari Caldwell because I really wanted to see what the rookie could do, and I thought he had a pretty fantastic showing in his first preseason game. Ends up with 3 tackles, had at least one pressure where he forced a throwaway and almost was an intentional grounding. They ended up picking up the flag, but really good push in the pocket even when he wasn't breaking through. I came away pretty impressed with the defensive line group as a whole, but as a rookie for his first performance, I loved what I saw from Jamar Caldwell as well.
And that's what you wanted to see. That's the type of performance that you wanted. And obviously, on the defensive line, if you're not getting sacks, it's a little bit of an unglorious position, right? You're doing a lot of the dirty work, having to, fight through double teams, having to, be physical and run support, and whenever you get your opportunity to try to get after the quarterback, you want to try to make some kind of a difference. And I think he did that tonight. He was definitely noticeable. I enjoyed watching him. He definitely is very fleet of foot for a very, very big man. He is deceptively
chasing down
quick.
Stuff on the sidelines.
Yes.
I know you talked about
and
too.
The effort, right? I love the effort, him running sideline to sideline as a defensive lineman.
Pounder.
You don't always see that, right? You don't always see that because, again, these guys are big boys, and that's not very, very easy to do that. But also I would like to call out Otito Ogbonnia. Feel like, he flashed a little bit for me as well on the initial watch. Feel like he was able to provide some quick penetration and make a good tackle in the hole and run support, really limit the the offense in that respect. But yeah, I feel like the defensive line, they held the Detroit Lions to under 3.5 yards a carry. That I will take every single day of the week and twice on Sunday.
And I think you saw just the size, right? Like, that's the one thing that we've kind of heard and one thing we've noticed about the additions, and the replacements that they put on this defensive line after losing guys like Morgan Fox and Poona Ford.
Yeah.
They went big, right? That and by, they did it on purpose, right? They wanted to get bigger because, believe it or not, even with the number 1 defense last year, scoring defense, they weren't great against the run, right?
No.
And they kind of lacked the size to hold up. And we know that, Jim Harbaugh teams want to be trenches teams. They went and like, okay, well, let's get bigger. And you signed a Naquan Jones, who's 330 plus, right? You drafted Jamari Caldwell, who's 330 plus, but also kind of fleet of foot enough to, bring you something in the pass rush game as well. And I thought that size really showed up. But I think you could go down the list. I mean, Tara Edwards is out there making plays, Sean Hand has some good moments. But I think with Tito Ogbonnia specifically, one of the things that Daniel Popper brought up, I really saw, and that was just the burst off of the line. Looked different, man. And those plays you're talking about where he's getting some penetration, getting in the backfield, I don't think we saw that burst from Tito Ogbonnia in years past. So I think that's really encouraging as a guy that I left off my initial 53-man roster prediction in favor of Scott Matlock, just because I assumed, maybe the versatility of Scott Matlock would kind of solidify that spot, as Tito felt like a guy at the very bottom of the roster who had 3 years to kind of prove it and hadn't done it yet. Very encouraging sign, I thought, from that defensive line group in this one. Very excited to see where they progress from here. And also, it felt like Tito was in early. And then Didn't seem like he played a lot more after that. It felt like they saw enough pretty early on to get him out of there and get some of those other guys some more snaps on the field. But
Yeah.
we still have more to get into because it was our first real look at the Zion Johnson experiment. And we told you that experiment could be ending when we saw him on Thursday night. But I actually have a take on it that might really surprise you. So we're going to get into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I know whenever I golf now, I need a 5 Hour Energy shot in my life, but golf is all about the good times with good people. That's the whole point. And good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Dave, we still have more to get into from this first preseason game. And, it's fun getting juiced up for a preseason game. And there's been so many guys we're watching for. And this is a Chargers team that I think just has so much turnover in general that it gives you more things to watch out for.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of it is like when you have rookies who were as successful as the Chargers rookies last year, it's easy to get excited about guys and think they could have a big impact for you even in their first season. But thank you guys as well, especially 10:30 Pacific time, and I know even later for some folks that aren't on the West Coast, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, make sure you guys check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. We talked about the good. Now let's talk about kind of the so-and-so. We saw the Zion Johnson experiment really in the flesh for the first time on Thursday Night Football, and I thought it was going to be a nightmare, and kind of early on it seemed like it might be, right? And the growing pains were fully on display. You have a high snap that maybe messes up the timing a little bit on one play, and then the worst thing that could happen, not even they recovered it, but like what you're afraid of is turnovers, right?
Yeah.
Snaps are hard. Snapping isn't always easy, and you see Trey Lance on, a 2nd and 2 fumble. He has to jump on it. Now it's a 3rd and 2. Those are the things you can't have from your starter, right? So
yeah,
in his first game, we saw some of those growing pains. He got 2 drives. My hot take, though, is his blocking was actually fantastic. I went back and watched all of his snaps from the first 2 drives of this game and came away super impressed with his ability to go and block from that position. Obviously, you have to be able to snap the ball. It's the number one thing, right? But as a blocker in the run game, he was a difference maker. He was getting push at the line of scrimmage. When they asked him to get to the second level and cut off linebackers, he did it with ease. He looked like the most athletic lineman that they have. He looked like one of the best run blockers he had. All of that is great. As a pass protector, I don't think he lost 1 rep. I don't think he lost a rep. So I know that, him fumbling snap, like we've been as big of critics as you could possibly be about the Chargers even trying this and its chances of succeeding. On the first watch, I didn't think Zion was good. And I'm glad I went back and watched those first 2 drives again, because if you just watch the blocking, he actually really blocked well. So up and down, I would say for sure in Zion's first, real live action.
Well, and hey, that was going to be expected, right? There was going to be some growing pains out there. You were just hoping that it wasn't all bad, that it wasn't just a complete car crash and it
derails the entire offense.
A complete failure that turned into a turnover or whatever. It wasn't that. A couple of mishaps, a couple of things that, hey, it's going to happen when you first start something, any kind of new venture. But it seemed like he was able to settle in, and then, once he did, he was able to showcase all of the intangibles and all of the things that the Chargers coaching staff raves about, how intelligent he is, how smart, how powerful he is, right? How athletic he is. I think you were able to see some of that after, a little bit of a shaky start. So that's encouraging for him to be at center and look good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that, continues to unfold.
Yeah, I thought it could be a train wreck, and we'll see. And him having good moments and really blocking well to go along with the obvious big mistakes that he had. And, Jim Harbaugh said he did well too. Still puts him a very long way away from, supplanting Bradley Bozeman as this team's starting center. But I think it could have gone so much worse. And as a blocker, when the snaps were good, I can totally see why they wanted that, right? I can totally see what they saw in him, at least as far as his movement ability, him making those kind of blocks and maybe even simplifying things for him in some ways, right? Besides the checks and things like that. I could see it a little bit. So pretty good sign, I think, in that regard. But I think Andre James was also in the game. I thought he played well too. One guy that I wasn't as impressed by, and I really wanted to be impressed by, was Junior Coulson. Now, this is another guy where I really have to go back and rewatch it before I can give the full kind of breakdown of it. But the one play that stands out to me is the Lions' only touchdown in this game, where to me, he just kind of recklessly threw himself into what ended up being the right hole, but ran into his own defender, took himself out of the play, and then the running back walks in right behind him. Up and down, I think, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, because I saw some parts of his game that I liked. He did have a couple of high pursuit plays where he's running sideline to sideline, getting after the offensive players and getting them on the ground. But yeah, that was kind of puzzling. I mean, especially when you're in tight and you're close to the red zone, you have to be aware of your surroundings. Yes, sometimes you're going to take chances, but you got to take calculated risks. I think, when you're in the red zone, that's not the time to take those risks. You think that's the time to be technically sound, to be able to be assignment sound and do your job. So I think that's one of the things that, hey, still learning experiences, still growing pains. I'm happy that he was on the field for most of the game. I think he needs it. I think that, as the preseason continues,
I think that's pretty telling though too.
That, right? Yeah, it is. It's telling, but also maybe I think it's confirming kind of what we've been seeing is him being with the second and third team and having Troy Dye get on the field before him. I think, he's showing what, where he is on that depth chart, but so something to keep an eye on as the preseason unfolds for sure.
Yeah, and maybe, we'll still see it. Just to me, on the plays I was just watching him specifically, it just seems like he's a tick behind. He can get out on the edge and, he has the athleticism to get out and go make tackles like that for sure. What I need him to do is be in that hole much quicker, read the play, get to your spot, be there to make a tackle for maybe not a loss, but maybe a minimal gain, right? Those are the things I'm looking for with Junior Coulson. Or just make a splash play, make a play in coverage, be able to get a pass breakup, do something. We didn't see those splashes for him. And for a guy, if he's starting and you think he's a starting player ready to go take that job, not that it should look like Tony Jefferson, right? But you should be seeing kind of more plays like that where it's okay, this dude is a starting level player. He shouldn't be in this game. I did not get the feeling that he shouldn't be in this game when I watched it. And unfortunately, like any, preseason game, you're not going to get to see everybody that you want to see. And that's kind of what I want to touch on here. Because whether it's, Trey Harris, Rondé Gadsden, who did have a catch, but, not much going on there. Kyle Kennard, even a little bit. There were some guys where it's just kind of too soon to tell. Trey Harris, he had one target on a fade in the end zone. Didn't really have a chance to catch it at all. Did not obviously have the splashes that KOS did. Rondé Gadsden, one catch. Those guys, not really as worried about it, though. Not time to hit the panic button, I wouldn't say at all.
No, not time to hit the panic button, although I think we all wanted to see more from them. We wanted to see them make more plays out there.
Or more targets, right?
Too. Yeah,
give them more
and that's
chances.
the thing. They weren't really given a lot of opportunities out there to be able to make an impact on the game. I think that there's not much to worry about. There's still plenty of games. There's still 3 more preseason games that the Chargers have on the docket, so these guys are definitely going to continue to get out there, get comfortable, get their feet wet, and adjust to the NFL game.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see kind of how they split up the snaps kind of going forward in these next few games, because obviously we got to see, Omarion Hampton, do we see him again? Will we get to see the rest of the starters and him on the field at some point, in other parts of this preseason?
So.
But yeah, Kyle Kennard, pretty quiet game.
Yeah.
He was the guy, on the first watch I was watching pretty closely, just to kind of hope to feel a little bit better about the edge 4 situation. I thought Caleb Murphy stood out more as an edge defender. I thought had a good game. Trayvon Morris-Brash is going to be in that conversation. Like, I don't think either of those guys kick Kyle Kennard off the roster, but I noticed them more than I noticed Kyle Kennard in the first game. I just didn't seem to have that same juice I was so excited to see from him when we watched him be the Bronco Nagurski Award winner as the best defensive player in college football last year. And I mean, he's a 4th-round pick, right? So there's a reason for that. I just didn't see it in game 1. Again, I'm not panicking on Kyle Kennard yet, but he was just one of those guys where I was watching him pretty closely.
Just wanted to see more.
You know, just to get some feelings about it, right? And just to get a good feeling, a flash here or there. And he didn't play a ton. Like, I think that really showed kind of where he was at on the depth chart, because it was, you know, Caleb Murphy. It was Trayvon Morris-Brash on the outside when they went out there. And those aren't the starters, right? Those are probably the 3rd-string guys, and he was coming in after them in this game. So I think it's safe to say we're going to see a lot more of him in this preseason, and safe to say that he needs those stats. But, man, I saw him, you know, putting in some work against, you know, some of the top college draft picks from this last season in the SEC. So I hope we can still see that. You know, he's been out there this whole time. Haven't heard anything about any injuries or anything.
No.
Just want to see that juice. Want to see him creating some havoc in the pass rushing game, because that's what he did last year, you know, at the collegiate level. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Thank you guys for joining us on a very late edition of the show. I really appreciate it. Don't leave yet, because we have a very special announcement on Monday's show. We have a big time interview. We already recorded it. It absolutely slaps. We have one of the best analytic minds in the NFL coming on the show on Monday, Warren Sharp of Warren Sharp's Football Analysis, coming on the show, getting a full show out of him on Monday to talk about, you know, what Jim Harbaugh is doing for this team, where Justin Herbert can improve in some of these late game situations, and also where the team can improve around him as far as his supporting cast. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as following us on all of our social media, because we post the show to those places every day, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. We appreciate all the everydayers out there. We put in every day in the offseason to get to these moments, and we're so excited to see where it goes from here during this training camp. But thank you guys all again for being here with us for our first live show of actually talking about games. We'll be back with you guys on Monday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.